The candle flickers beside you, its wax leans like a tired spine, dripping slowly toward the saucer, each drop landing with the quiet certainty of time passing. Outside, the night groans beneath the fog. Not wind, something denser, like breath from the mouth of a city that's forgotten how to live without grieving. Tonight you will not dream of peace. Tonight you fall asleep in the year 1852, somewhere between the stink of East London gutters and the grim silence of a morning room where no one's cried in days. The air is still but not clean. Somewhere someone has just died, and somewhere else someone is about to profit from it. You are not a mourner, you are the one they call when it's already too late. You are a Victorian Undertaker. It is your job to dress the dead, but also to pretend they mattered. Pretend you're not used to this. Pretend that the black hat and the gloves and the roses in the hearse are for dignity and not for money. But beneath the satin and solemnity lies a slower truth, a crawling, soot-stained fatigue, the kind that curls into your coat and under your fingernails until you forget where death ends and you begin. Breathe in the scent of formaldehyde and damp wool. Breathe out, and descend now into the cold, complicated business of remembering the forgotten. Now close your eyes and drift into the first moment. You sleep above the shop, always above the shop, because the dead don't need space, and the rent is cheaper when you live among the unsold coffins. The ceiling leaks in the corner, and the floorboards creak like reluctant mourners. But it's quiet, at least when no one's rotting. Tonight the body downstairs is still fresh, an infant, wrapped in linen and cradled in a box not much larger than a loaf of bread. Her mother couldn't afford the extras. No velvet, no engraving, no name, just girl. You didn't ask. You lie flat on a cot made of old pine slats, a hand-me-down from a neighbor who once built beds for the workhouse. The mattress is lumpy but not soft, stuffed with straw that scratches your thighs when you shift, and sometimes lice crawl from the corners to explore the folds of your nightshirt. You flick them off absently, too tired to care. The ceiling above is cracked, a jagged split that looks like a dried riverbed. You stare at it in the dark. Sometimes when the moon's full it casts a shape across the boards, like a skeletal hand reaching down to pluck your soul. You named it the Collector. On quiet nights you greet it. Not tonight, you whisper. Your blanket is a heavy woolen mass that smells of damp, decay and funerary ash. It keeps the cold off your chest, but your feet still freeze, even with socks. You stopped trying to fix the draft coming through the window, just tucked a roll of cloth into the sill and pretended it worked. A cat used to live here. You never owned it. It just came like the dead, slept on the foot of your cot, left rat corpses by the stairs like tribute. One day it wandered into the mortuary and never came back. You think about it sometimes. Wonder if it knew something you didn't. The walls are lined with shelves, not books, not photos, but wooden samples, varnishes, stains, panelings. You memorized every one: oak, elm, pine, mahogany for the rich. The wood feels warmer than your own skin most days. You press your hand against the grain to fall asleep, pretend it's not another box waiting to be filled. Sometimes when you finally drift into sleep you dream in whispers, not voices, just the hush of cloth being folded, earth being shoveled, the soft clink of coins in a grieving hand. The dreams are gray, always gray, and in them you sit always alone. Last week, the gaslight exploded in your neighbor's shop. He sold mourning veils, the kind made from crepe that smothered faces like webs. He lost 3 fingers, now he can't tie bows, and he drinks even more. You stitched his wound with a needle meant for corset lining. It held, barely. In the silence of your room you hear everything. The groan of the beams when someone dies, the carriage wheels on cobblestone at midnight, the cry of a widow too proud to wail at the funeral, but not proud enough to hold it in after. These sounds haunt the wallpaper. You're sure of it. It peels in the corners like it's trying to escape. Once you tried to decorate, put up a drawing of a church you found in the gutter. It got damp. Mold spread across the steeple. You left it there. The shop below smells like varnish and decay. The stairs between here and there are narrow, steep, and haunted by your own footsteps. You count them in the dark, out of habit. 17. The 7th creaks. The 11th is cracked. If you step too hard, it snaps like a bone. Sometimes you hear your own name, Whispered from the base of the stairs, no one's there, you've checked. And still you sleep. Because the body must be boxed by dawn and the widow will arrive at 8, and the boy you hired to polish the brass dropped a handle in the sewer yesterday, so you must clean it yourself. You sleep not because you want to, you sleep because the dead do not wait. And if you don't lie down now, you might forget which side of the coffin you belong on. The air is still. The cat is gone. The walls no longer watch. You pull the blanket over your chin and close your eyes. The lice quiet down, the ceiling hand retreats. And for now, at least, you rest. You dress in black, always black, but not the rich velvet black of noble mourning. No, your black is a deadened hue, faded with lye soap and years of wear. The sleeves are frayed, the cuffs uneven. There's a hole in the inner lining of your coat pocket where coins occasionally vanish, like the dead slipping from this world without noise. Your shirt is stiff with starch, you couldn't afford, but appearances matter when death pays your rent. The collar scratches your neck like guilt, and the buttons 3 are mismatched, one replaced with a bit of knotted string after a client's child ripped it off during a sobbing fit. You never replaced it, you simply tuck the string inside and hope no one notices. The trousers are the kind that hold their creases not from ironing but from endless kneeling, endless lifting, endless brushing against coffin edges slick with oil. They smell faintly of mildew and candle wax. You have one pair, maybe 1.5, if you count the patched monstrosity folded in the drawer beneath the basin. You don't. That pair is for emergencies, like blood. Shoes. Once you had leather boots, thick soles, double-stitched, bought in the optimistic summer of '48 when cholera paid well, and you dared to imagine this job might turn into a shop front and a pension. Those boots rotted through the heel after a wet burial in winter. Now you wear hand-me-downs from a vicar who died owing you 6 pence. The shoes pinch at the toes and gape at the sides. The leather moans when you walk. Your hands are always gloved, not for warmth, but because the living fear the touch of a man who touches the dead. Even children avoid you in the street. They say your fingers are cold, that your palm smells like church cellars and grave moss. Maybe they're right. You've forgotten the last time someone took your hand for kindness. The gloves are cotton, black, too thin in winter, too hot in summer. But skin must be hidden. It's part of the image. You wear them even when alone, even in sleep sometimes, when dreams of burial leave your fingers twitching with phantom weight. Your top hat, yes, the crown jewel of your costume, tall, stiff, ridiculous, lined with sweat and lined again with straw to hide the dent where you dropped it in the gutter after a scuffle with a drunk mourning brother. You cleaned it best you could, but the odor remains. You pretend it's incense. And beneath it all the underclothes, coarse linen, the kind that chafes under the arms and itches when damp. You wash them in the same basin where you clean the mortuary tools. You try not to think about that too much. There's never quite enough soap. You hang them by the hearth where they never fully dry. Just trade one smell for another. Ash for sweat, lye for rot. Some days you envy the mourners. Their garments are fresh, hired for the day, crisp with crepe and dignity. They wear black as costume. You wear it as sentence. Even your soul feels starch-stiffed. There was a time when you tried color, a red scarf once, gifted by someone whose name you can't recall. You wore it beneath your coat, against your throat, like a secret defiance. The corpse that day was a boy, 8, maybe 9, drowned. And when his mother saw the red peeking from your collar, she screamed, said you mocked the blood in her dreams. You took it off and never wore it again. Now everything is black. Even your reflection. The mirror above your wash basin has turned its own shade of gray. The glass is clouded, not from dirt but time. Like it too has grown tired of seeing you dress each morning like a mourner at your own funeral. Your hair is combed, usually, slicked back with oil that smells of camphor. You use the same blend on the dead, economical. Your mustache is trimmed with a dull scissor, and your cheeks are scraped raw every second day with a blade so blunt, you think it might be part punishment. You do not dress for style, you dress for silence. The kind of silence that walks ahead of you when you pass through town, the kind that spreads like ink in the puddles behind your boots. It seps not just what you wear, it seps what they see. They see the man who arrives when hope has left. They see the man who speaks gently but never smiles. They see the man who never runs, never flinches, never gasps, because nothing surprises you anymore. Even rats crawling from a coffin during transport. Even a hand that twitches days after death from trapped gas and not resurrection. You simply adjust the coat, tilt the head, wipe the brow, and carry on. You keep a black ribbon in your coat pocket for children's caskets. Sometimes you tie it around your own wrist on long nights, just to feel like something in this world is held together. And then there are the aprons. Oh yes, not for public view, but for the back room. Thick canvas, blood-stained, gut-splattered, dyed in the invisible hues of autopsy and accident. They hang from hooks like butcher's relics, each one crusted with a memory you dare not revisit. You strap one on when the work begins. It stiffens your spine, narrows your breathing. The smell clings to your coat, no matter how many sprigs of dried lavender you sew into the lining. Clients sometimes wrinkle their noses. You tell them it's the candle wax. The candle wax lies for you often. When you walk down the street, children whisper behind door frames. Grown men tip their hats too fast, too nervously. You nod, as if the world hasn't made you invisible in daylight. And always you walk in black. Because to dress any other way would be to forget who you are. And the dead do not forgive forgetfulness. So you pin your collar, you smooth your lapels, you tug your gloves tight, and you descend the stairs one slow step at a time, back into the smell of cedar and mold, back into the weight of mourning, back into the job, back into the role, and maybe, just maybe, back into the version of yourself that remembers why this once felt noble. But that thought fades, as all things do. Rest now. There's still time before the first knock on the door. You wake up with the taste of mothballs in your mouth. Not literally, though you once bit into one by mistake, thinking it was a sugared mint left at a widow's tea table. That was a long time ago, before you learned not to trust anything wrapped in kindness. The cot groans beneath your weight. So does your spine. You've slept in the same crooked position for years, curled slightly, as if bowing to something invisible above you. The kind of shape you take after lifting hundreds of bodies with care, but not affection. It becomes part of your posture, permanent, like shame. The morning light doesn't pour in. It leaks, pale and reluctant, through the soot-streaked window. You don't open the curtain. It sticks anyway. You just squint through the dust and try to remember what month it is by the quality of gray. You sit up, slowly. There's always that first moment of wondering if your legs will work. Some days they don't. Not fully. On those days you rely on the wall to pull yourself up. The wall and the anger. Your toes find the floor. Cold. Uneven wood. Slick in the wrong places. You pull on your socks. Threadbare, mismatched, damp at the heel. You hope they'll dry from the heat of your body before noon. If not, you'll live. You always do. Unfortunately, there's no mirror in your morning. You know what you look like. Hollow-eyed, pale, slightly yellowed teeth from pipe smoke and grief. Your tongue is coated. You scrape it with the back of a spoon. Not for hygiene, for dignity. Your basin is already half full. You left it like that the night before. Water drawn from the pump on Iron Alley. It smells faintly of rust and something that died beneath it last winter. You splash your face and feel the sting of cold creep behind your ears. You use the same rag for your armpits, your neck, your hands. You wring it out and hang it on the nail by the window. It will never truly dry. Soap is precious. You rub a sliver between your palms until it becomes a film like ghost sweat. You rub your wrists, behind your ears, beneath your arms. You avoid the wound on your thumb, the one from the coffin hinge. It still oozes sometimes, even after 2 weeks. You hope it's not infection. You've seen too many of those. Your boots take time. The left one must be coaxed. The tongue folds in on itself like it's ashamed of being part of the ensemble. You mutter to it. Not words, just curses shaped like breath. You step into them. They squeak, and not in a charming way. Downstairs, the shop creaks. It always does. You hear the tap-tap of a loose shutter, the wind complaining through the vent beside the embalming table. You hear the rats sometimes. They avoid the coffins, but not the walls. They know your routines. You light the fire in the small hearth with paper soaked in wax. You feed it old invoices, scraps of morning announcements, the corner of a black veil you tore on a nail last Tuesday. You don't speak. You haven't spoken yet. Your voice isn't ready. It needs warming like tea or blood. Once the flames growl to life, you set the kettle on, tin battered, missing its handle. It whistles sideways, like someone hissing in pain. The tea is boiled brick dust and leaves that taste like bark. You add nothing. You drink it from a chipped mug that once read faith, though now it simply says F.A. You eat nothing. Food is for after the first job. If there's a job, if the boy returns from the doctor's house with news of a consumptive daughter, or the alley brawler who didn't survive the pipe to the skull, or another typhoid child from the tenements. You wait, listening. You pick lint from your coat sleeve. You wipe the smudge from your glasses. You polish the brass handle of the shop's front door, not because it matters, but because something has to shine. Something has to pretend it isn't slowly eroding from touch. Sometimes you write in the ledger, not names, not payments, just notes. Rain again, seepage from the left wall. Window pane cracked during storm, use black cloth. Mrs. Everly cried today. I did not. You write these things like prayers, useless but routine. Some pages are stained with wax, others with something darker. You check the body. There's almost always a body. You descend the stairs into the back chamber, the air growing thick with the smell of varnish, cold metal and sweet rot. It's a polite smell at first, like dried fruit left too long in a box. Then it deepens, then it turns. This morning it's the boy again, not the infant. That one was collected yesterday by the silent man in the gray coat. This is a new boy, 13 perhaps, thin, bruised around the temple, a coal cart accident. You examine the stitching. You didn't do it. The hospital tried. Their thread is thick, black, medical. Yours is thinner, gentler, for the illusion of peace. You pull the sheet down, just enough to adjust the collar. His eyes are closed. You stir thankful for that. You cover him again. No crying, not in the morning. Crying wastes salt and makes the tea taste bitter. You return upstairs. You check the wreath in the window. It's hanging crooked. A gust must have shifted the hook. You fix it, not out of respect, out of rhythm. Things must look as they should. That's the point of your trade. Appearance, order, and delay. Delay the reality. Delay the rot. Delay the grief just long enough for someone to forget it was ever meant to be felt. You unlock the door. It creaks open to a world that doesn't want you. No one says good morning. No one waves. But that set's fine. You're not here to be welcomed. You're here to witness what happens when all other witnesses have left. And so your day begins. Same coat, same silence, same slow descent. Let the mourners sleep. Let the bells ring somewhere far off. You have your kettle. You have your ledger. You have your dead. And for now, you have time. It begins with the need. The quiet, creeping, unmistakable pressure in your gut. Not a pain exactly, but a reminder. Your body still functions, despite everything. Despite the sleep, the damp, the grief soaked into your fingertips. You are still alive. Unfortunately, there is no chamber pot in your room. You broke it last year, tripping over it in the dark during a thunderstorm. The contents spilled onto your only pair of shoes. You burned the socks. You didn't replace the pot. You decided to use the privy like a proper Victorian man, even though nothing about it feels proper. You descend the back stairs, the ones meant for deliveries and grief too large to fit through the front door. These stairs don't creak the same way. They sigh, long, resentful exhalations from a house that resents being built beside decay. The privy is outside, of course, behind the shop, down a narrow alley lined with soot-stained bricks and the occasional dead bird. Sometimes you think the birds die just to avoid the stench. You wouldn't blame them. The wooden door sticks in the cold. You push with your shoulder. It gives with a soft groan, like it's ashamed to let you in. Inside it is dark. There's a small hole for light, but it's mostly clogged with grime and the memory of better architecture. You've nailed a bit of cloth over the doorway, not for privacy but to keep the rats from running out when you open it. It doesn't work. The smell is what it's always been. A mix of human waste, wet rot, and a faint undercurrent of chemical lime that no longer fights the battle it once promised. The pit below is deep, or so you tell yourself. You don't know. You've never looked too long. You're afraid you might see something looking back. You unbutton with practiced speed. The trousers slide down just enough. There's a hook on the wall where you hang your coat. You do it automatically, then regret it when a spider descends from the beam and lands on the shoulder. You shake it off and whisper an apology to no one. There is no seat. There is only a splintering wooden board, slightly warped, with a hole you aim for. You miss sometimes. Everyone does. You've slipped once. Your shoulder still aches when it rains. The sound is humiliating, even when you soar alone. The silence after is worse. There is no paper. Not that you could afford it. There are torn bits of funeral announcements, scraps of curtain, and a few long-forgotten letters from people who never meant the things they wrote. You use one of those today. The ink smears against your skin. You try not to read the words. You hear something shift outside, a footstep, a cat, the wind. You stay still, very still. In your line of work, silence isn't just polite, it's required. You breathe through your mouth. It doesn't help. The pit seems fuller this month. You'll need to call the nightmen soon, men who haul waste from beneath the city while pretending not to recognize the bodies buried in it. They come drunk, they leave drunker, but they do their job, mostly. You finish. You dress. You wash your hands at the rain barrel beside the door, one palmful at a time. The water is ice. It smells faintly of ash and bird droppings. You scrub anyway. Your nails are always dirty. Your knuckles are cracked. You look down at your hands and think these have touched the cheeks of the dead more gently than any living woman's skin, and that is a truth you don't share with anyone. You return through the alley. You step over a rat carcass. You avoid the puddle near the drain. It's deeper than it looks, and it never dries. You think of the boy in the back room, the one with the stitched temple. You wonder if he had a toilet in his house. Probably not. Probably a hole, like this one. Maybe smaller. Maybe his was just a bucket shared between 5 siblings. You step back into the warmth of the mortuary, and the contrast is almost dizzying. The air inside smells of polish and dust, and for a moment it feels holy. Until you remember this isn't sanctuary, it's storage. You look down, and notice the hem of your trousers is wet, not from the privy, from the damp of the alley, but it still makes you uncomfortable. You go to the hearth and sit near the flame, lifting your legs to let the warmth chase the chill back into the floorboards. You do not speak of these things. Not to clients. Not to friends. What friends? Not even to yourself. You pretend you are dignified. That you rise in the morning and cleanse your soul along with your skin. That your waist is quiet and your breath is always sweet. That you are not human in a way that embarrasses. But you are. And every morning reminds you. There steps a knock at the door. You stand. You straighten your coat. You forget about the damp hem, the ink-stained hand, the spider that may still live in your collar. And you answer the door like a man who has never used a toilet in his life. Because dignity isn't something you own. It's something you borrow, wear briefly, and return before it stains. And the day begins again. Same ritual. Same pit. Same silence. And for now, rest. Rest in knowing no one saw you. No one heard. And the dead, the blessed dead, never judge. You wouldn't call it a meal. You wouldn't even call it a break. It's more like a pause, a quiet, resigned moment between death and more death, a ritual of pretending to nourish a body you stopped respecting years ago. Still, the clock ticks forward, the stomach rumbles, and so you feed it. Your breakfast begins not with hunger, but with the sound of rats leaving the pantry. A good sign means there's still something in there worth gnawing. You tap the floor twice with your heel. It's a warning, a habit, a negotiation. Let me have my bread, and I won't set another trap. You step into the pantry. The air inside is dry and bitter, like flour gone stale and dreams turned sour. The shelves are sparsely populated, a tin of treacle that's mostly hardened to the consistency of brick, a jar of something pickled that you've stopped trying to identify, and a cloth-covered hunk of bread so stiff it could double as a headstone. You tear off a corner. It resists. Your teeth do the rest. It tastes like sawdust and vinegar, with a hint of mold that you pretend is seasoning. You chew slowly, not because you're savoring it, but because it takes time. Time is good. Time keeps you from having to deal with the dead boy in the back too soon. Next comes the meat. You unwrap a bundle of newspaper from the icebox, though calling it that is generous. The ice has long since melted, and what remains is a slick, gray slab of salted something. Pork, maybe, or beef, or perhaps it was once a rat before someone slapped a label on it. Doesn't matter now. The salt's doing its job, mostly. You cut a slice with a blunt knife. The edge shudders across the meat like it's trying to remember what sharpness felt like. You lay the slice on top of your bread and press them together. The resulting sandwich crunches in places it shouldn't. You eat standing up, by the hearth, one arm crossed over your stomach as if you're trying to keep the food inside through sheer will. It helps with the nausea, usually. There is no butter. There is no jam. There is no toast. There is just you, the hearth, and a chewing noise that sounds too loud in your own ears. Sometimes you talk during breakfast. Not to anyone, of course. Just to the flames. You tell them what Sep's waiting in the back room. You tell them about the little girl with the lace gloves who didn't look like she belonged in a pine box. You tell them about the gentleman who insisted on being buried with his ledger, and the smell of rotting ink when the coffin lid split open 2 days later. The fire listens. It crackles politely, then devours your words like everything else. You sip tea if there's any left. It's bitter now, cold, floating with flecks of ash and a single black hair you can't identify. You drink it anyway. There's no such thing as spoiled when your hands touch corpses for a living. Sometimes you read during breakfast. Not novels. You don't own any. You burned the last one during a winter where coal became a myth. Instead, you read the death notices in the local paper. You circle the names that sound wealthy. You underline the ones that died young. Young means fresh. Wealthy means ornate. Ornate means payment. You fold the paper carefully, stack it beside your plate. You might use it later in the privy. Your fingers smell like meat, lye and paper ink. You don't wash them yet. You'll be touching worse things before noon. Might as well let it all mix. A knock at the back gate. You freeze. Not fear, habit. A knock before breakfast is never good. It's not a client. Clients use the front door. It's the midwife from Birch Row. You know her by the rhythm. 3 knocks, 1 pause, then a soft tap, like regret. You open the door. She doesn't look up. Still warm, she mutters. You nod. She hands you the slip of paper. Male 4 years. Fevered lungs. The coins are wrapped in cloth. 3 pence short, but you'll take it. The boy is in a basket, curled like sleep, wrapped in a shawl that smells of lavender and desperation. You take him gently. You always do. The dead feel everything, or so you once believed. You set the basket on the table where your breakfast was. You don't finish your food. You don't finish your tea. You don't finish your thoughts. The morning ends where it always does, in silence. In the gentle shifting of cloth over small limbs. In the sound of coins clinking into a drawer you no longer lock. In the taste of stale bread lingering behind your teeth while you clean under fingernails already blackened with memory. This is breakfast. And now it seps over. It doesn't begin with digging. It begins with arranging. You sit at your small desk, lit by a cracked oil lamp that casts just enough shadow to make everything look a little less real. You're looking at a list of names, some crossed out, some underlined, some just hanging there like ghosts in ink. Each name is a job, but also a story you'll never get to know fully. A collapsed chimney, a stillbirth, a coughing fit that turned into a hemorrhage that turned into a widow. You don't need to ask. You've learned to guess from the handwriting, the ink pressure, whether the J loops upward or drags like regret. You sharpen your pencil with a knife that once cut rope for a hanging. You use it to write collected coffin begun, or just, the first body today is a child again. You thought it would stop hurting eventually, not in a weeping way but in a tired, skin-crawling way. But it doesn't. The smaller the body, the heavier it feels. You carry him from the basket to the table in the back room. The wood is always cold. The sheet is always thin. You unwrap the shawl. There are bruises, but not the kind you report, just the kind you make peace with. You tuck them beneath lace and sleeves. The work begins. First, the cleaning. Not true embalming, not in your shop. That's for the wealthier end of town, with their painted cheeks and false eyes. You do the basics. Wipe the skin, close the mouth, cross the hands. You press the lids down until they stay. Sometimes you have to sew them shut. Just a tiny stitch, no one will see. You hate that part. Not for what it is, but for how normal it's become. You fill the body gently with dry herbs. Lavender, pennyroyal bay. Not to preserve, to pretend, to mask, to soothe. You dress him in the clothing provided by the family. It's too big, always is. You fold it carefully, pin it where it droops. A tiny jacket, velvet at the cuffs. You polish the buttons, one's missing. You find an extra in your drawer. It doesn't match, but neither did the world. You speak, sometimes as you work. Almost done now. Just fixing this collar. There you are, love. The room doesn't set answer, but it listens. Next, the coffin. You built it yesterday. Pine, no lining. They couldn't afford the silk. Just a clean cloth in the memory of something softer. You cradle the boy into it like laying someone down into sleep. A deep, cold, endless sleep. You hammer the lid halfway shut, just enough to keep the shape. You still finish the nails when they arrive. Then comes the adult body. An older man from Black Dog Alley, found in the gutter, face down, hat still on. You doubt anyone will claim him. Still, you give him the same courtesy. Wash, trim the beard, comb the hair. The lice bite you. You don't flinch. You pack the mouth with cotton. The jaw wouldn't stay closed otherwise. You used to gag at this work. Now you hum. The hymn your mother sang when your brother passed. You can remember the words, but the tune fits the rhythm of your movements. Tap, fold, close, pat, step back. You clean the table between bodies. Always, not for health but habit. You check the book again. 3 funerals this week. 1 postponed. 1 delayed payment. 1 burial scheduled in Highgate, which means a cart ride across half the city. You hate that ride. The cobblestones rattle the bones if you don't pack the lining tight. Once a client opened the casket and screamed, thought the corpse had shifted. You told her it was the light. She didn't believe you. You polish the horse's harnesses when the boy doesn't show up. He sets always late. He drinks. You do the work yourself more often now. You load the caskets into the cart, 1 at a time. You test the wheels. You light the lanterns on either side of the hearse. 1 flickers. You let it. You wrap the reins around your hand, then uncoil them again. You don't steak. You never speak first. She asks, "May I see him?" You nod. You show her the child. You step aside. You watch her hands. They hover above his face, but do not touch. She weeps, not from her throat, but from her spine. A shaking, silent grief that unravels everything in the room. You offer a chair. She declines. You hand her a kerchief clean and folded. She takes it, leaves it behind when she goes. You finish the nails. You carry the box like glass. You cover it with cloth, black, trimmed with fraying lace. You ride to the cemetery. You wait. You lower. You leave. You return. You do it again. Later you file the names. You wash the tools. You light the candle in the corner of the workshop that keeps going out. You hang your coat. You sit. You think about the boy with the mismatched button. You wonder if his soul noticed. You wonder if souls notice anything at all. Then you tell yourself that it doesn't matter. Your job is not to wonder. It sets to carry, to cover, to conceal, and maybe, just maybe, to soften the distance between flesh and forgetting. The work never stops. But for now, you can sit still and let the silence press against your back like an old friend until the next knock comes. They don't hate you. Not exactly. They just never really see you, not as a person. More like a shape, a function, a necessary shadow in the theater of grief. You move through their lives at the exact moment they least want to remember, and so they do their best to forget you. You walk through the streets and people move aside, not rudely, not quickly, just enough to remind you you are not part of the living. You are tolerated in their world, like mildew, or debt, something unpleasant but too entrenched to challenge. Children whisper. Not loudly, just behind sleeves and bonnets. That's him, they say. That's the one who carries them. You pretend not to hear. You pretend not to care. But you remember the first time a child crossed the street to avoid your shadow. You remember the sting of that distance. It faded, like everything else. Shopkeepers never greet you. They serve you with their eyes on your coins, their fingers brushing yours with the subtle recoil of a man touching a cold chain. You smell faintly of embalming oil and dust. Even when you bathe, you've tried perfumes. Lavender, bay leaf, camphor. All it does is make the scent more complex, not less noticeable. There's a butcher who nods. Once, every Tuesday, you nod back. This is the closest thing you have to friendship. Women don't speak to you unless they're in mourning. Even then, their eyes avoid yours. They look at the coffin, the flowers, the priest. You are the instrument, not the music. One woman once asked your name. You almost wept. You told her. She didn't remember it, just needed it for the invoice. You deliver the dead with dignity, and they return it with silence. On Sundays, if you attend church, they make room for you in the back pew, not out of reverence, out of containment. You are the reminder of how it ends. No one wants the echo of death's footstep between hymns. You mouth the words. You do not sing. No one notices. You once tried to court someone, a dressmaker. Kind eyes, smelled like starch and lilac. You brought her a ribbon. She accepted it, smiled, then asked what you did for a living. You told her the truth. She never wore the ribbon, never spoke again. You keep it in your drawer, next to the broken rosary and the unused lace cuff. Your clients treat you well. At first, during the arrangement they are grateful, or numb, sometimes tearful. They call you sir, and clasp your hand in thanks. But the moment the funeral ends, they vanish. Some never pay, some forget your face entirely. One woman once mistook you for the carriage driver at her next husband's burial. You stood in the rain for 3 hours before realizing she'd moved on. You don't attend weddings. You aren't invited to christenings. No one brings you gifts at Christmas. Except once, a loaf of fruit bread, left anonymously on your doorstep. You ate half before discovering the mold. Still you were grateful. You learned to stop expecting thanks. Now, a nod is enough. Now a coin dropped in your palm without eye contact feels generous. Now being ignored feels preferable to being noticed. Because when they do notice, truly notice, it's never kindness. It's suspicion. The rumors swirl like chimney soot, that you steal from the dead, that you enjoy your work too much, that you sleep in coffins to save space, that your touch curses the unborn. You've heard them all. You don't or deny them. You don't to confirm them. You just keep walking. You walk like someone who sep's done it all before. Because you have. And you will again. They respect your silence. Not because it sits noble. Because it makes them less nervous. You are allowed to exist only in sadness. The moment you laugh, they flinch. The moment you smile, they grow uneasy. Like the dead man in the box might smile too. So you don't smile. Not in public. Not even in dreams. Not anymore. Even the street sweepers, the ones with no teeth and frostbitten fingers, look at you with a strange blend of sympathy and superstition. You envy their position. They deal with filth, but you deal with finality, and people fear that more. Still you work. Still you wear your coat and your gloves and your 2 small shoes. Still you tip your hat to the living and cradle the dead like broken promises. Still you keep your head bowed in the bakery queue so the girl behind the counter won't recognize you. Still, you carve small symbols into your workbench. Not religious, not pagan, just yours. You remind yourself, you are not invisible, you are not cursed, you are not unwanted. You are a necessary silence, and that has its place. You close the ledger for the day. You step out into the fog, and though no one says your name, the street still parts for you, because even if they forget what you look like, they will remember how you made them feel, and that is your only monument. Rest, now. The city has forgotten you for the night. Let the dead remember. You can smell it anymore. That sip's the first thing that happens. The rot, The sour tang of infection, the subtle shift from sweat to decay, it fades. Not because it disappears, but because your body gives up trying to warn you, like a town that stops ringing the bell because the fire never stops burning. Your hands are always stained, not with blood, not usually, but with the varnish that never washes out, with the mildew from damp coffins, with the dull residue of everything the body releases when it gives up pretending to be alive. You scrub. Of course you scrub. You have your rituals. Boil the water, add vinegar, rub with a horsehair brush until the knuckles redden, rinse. Repeat. You've worn through the skin on your palms more times than you can count. It cracks now, bleeds if the weather turns cold too fast. You wrap the worst of it in cloth and keep working. You don't have soap, not proper soap. You use ash, sometimes lye, sometimes shavings from candles that were never meant to cleanse. They help, a little. Your fingernails harbor secrets. You try not to look too closely. There was a time when you flinched at boils, when you hesitated before touching a face speckled with the final flush of typhoid, when the sight of open sores or sunken eyes made your throat tighten. That time is gone. Now you lift the chin with 2 fingers. Now you wash the wounds with calm hands. Now, you cut away the hair where the lice have nested and burn it in a tin pail with barely a breath. And sometimes the bodies speak. Not in words, no, but in signs. A sudden release of air, a twitch from built-up gas, a soft wet noise that reminds you you're not alone. You always are, though. You haven't been truly clean in years. The water in your basin goes gray after the first rinse. By the third rinse, it's just symbolic. You tried, once, to bathe fully. You heated 2 buckets, poured them into a copper tub someone left behind during a cholera panic. You scrubbed every inch of skin, even behind your ears. You felt new. By morning, the rats had drowned in the tub, drawn to the warmth. The water was stained with fur and filth. You never tried again. Your clothes aren't clean either. You hang them by the fire. You beat them with sticks. You dust them with flour to soak up the worst. You wear them again and again until they stiffen from use, not starch. Your bedding smells like breath, not your own. Your pillow has a dark patch you can set, explain. You tell yourself it's 6 ink. Your teeth, you clean them with a rag and a sprinkle of baking soda borrowed from a neighbor who doesn't know you've been using it. Your gums bleed. A lot. You spit into the corner of the sink and turn away. You lost a molar last winter. You swallowed it by accident. Your breath smells like iron and old tea. No one sits close enough to notice. Your hair is combed with fingers. The brush broke years ago. You've plucked out the worst knots. There's always a flea. You flick it into the fireplace and watch it pop. You've considered shaving your head, but your ears stick out. And pride is stubborn, even when covered in scabs. You've seen worse, of course. Much worse. The woman with trench rot in both legs. The man whose tongue blackened after biting through it in fever. The child whose belly swelled with worms, yet still smiled at you, eyes hollow, hands cold, too polite to ask for more bread. You didn't flinch. You flinch at nothing now. Even your dreams have stopped showing you the worst. Your mind's gotten bored of horror. Now it shows you simpler things. A clean shirt, a steaming bath, a kiss from someone who doesn't flinch when you lean in. Disease is not rare. It sets air. It sets handshake. It sets doorknob. It's the coin that passes from widow to gloved palm. You've buried people for sneezing too hard. You've watched a man cough 3 times and never rise again. You've read the pamphlets, miasma, imbalance, bad blood. You've tried the cures, mustard poultice, leeches, mercury tonic. None of it matters. Not in the end. The healthy die, the sick linger, the body betrays. And you stand between the betrayal and the burial. You are not immune. You're just overlooked. You caught something once. Fever, chills, black spots on your legs. You thought it was the end. You wrote your own name in the ledger, just in case. Then you recovered. Part of you was disappointed. That same part now wakes every morning with a rattle in the chest and wonders, is today the day? Is this the moment your lungs fill with liquid and your hands go blue, and someone else must dress you in the black coat? Who will brush your hair? Who will clean under your nails? Who will find the flea and flick it into the fire? You don't know. You try not to care. Disease is everywhere. Hygiene is theater. And death? Death is patient. It always gets the last wash. But for now, you pick the lint from your collar. You trim the yellowed nail. You rinse the cloth and hang it by the window. You pretend. And that is enough. Rest now. Your breath still fogs the glass. You still here. For now. You never went looking for trouble. You were born into the kind of quiet that kept its head down, paid its taxes late, and swallowed its anger with sour beer. You weren't the sort to shout in the streets or throw stones at constables. You learned early that the best way to survive was to vanish. But law, in this city, in this century, doesn't always need a reason. Sometimes it just needs someone who looks like they've touched the dead. And you do. You carry the scent of it, the posture, the hollow under your eyes that says, I know how the body ends. That makes people nervous. That makes the magistrate look at you just a moment too long when someone goes missing on your street. It starts small. A boy in uniform stands outside your shop, not doing anything. Just watching. He says nothing when you step outside. You nod. He doesn't nod back. Next week a constable comes to ask about a stolen brooch. You haven't seen it. Haven't touched it. He doesn't believe you. He asks to look inside the workshop. You let him. He taps the coffin lids. One of them echoes differently. He raises an eyebrow. You explain it's hollow oak, cheaper, for paupers. He doesn't apologize. He leaves with a warning in his eyes. You don't sleep well that night. The week after that you fined. 5 shillings. For obstruction of street flow. You ask, obstruction by what? They say your hearse was parked improperly during a funeral. You were comforting a weeping widow whose son had drowned in a ditch. You pay the fine anyway. You always do. Because arguing leads to records. Records lead to suspicion. And suspicion here is as contagious as typhoid. You've seen worse, of course. You've seen a boy lashed for stealing a heel of bread. The welt on his back looked like a map of regret. You gave him a coin once. He vanished the next day. You think the wound got infected. You saw a woman once, hair cut to the scalp, walking barefoot through the square, branded with a hot iron for enticement. She had smiled at the wrong man. The man was a constable. You lowered your eyes when she passed. Not out of shame, out of survival. There are laws, and then there are customs. And then there are the unspoken edicts carved into brick by centuries of gaslight and fear. You are not allowed to look too long. You are not allowed to raise your voice. You are not allowed to carry anything sharp unless it's for the dead. Even then you must wrap it in cloth and keep it away from windows. Someone once accused you of witchcraft. It wasn't serious. Just a drunk man spitting into the gutter, muttering about how you always looked the same. He said he'd seen you bury his uncle 15 years ago, and you haven't aged a day. He sets wrong, of course. You stay've aged. Just inwards. The truth is, the law doesn't fear you. It just doesn't trust anything that touches death without flinching. They can control it. So they fine it. Question it. Watch it from alleys. You keep every receipt. Every signed ledger. Every permit to transport a body. You file them in neat stacks tied with string, brittle paper shields against bureaucratic cruelty. They one set save you. But they buy time. You tried to get certified once, official recognition as a licensed undertaker. They told you the board was full. You tried again a year later. They told you your shop was too small. You tried once more. They didn't reply. Now you don't try. Now you wait. Wait for the knock that isn't a client. Wait for the man with the ink-stained cuffs who asks, "May we look inside the shed?" Wait for the mistake. Because you know it will come. Not from guilt, but from presence. From simply existing long enough to be convenient. The laws change. The fines increase. The forms grow more complex. And still you hammer the nails. Still you oil the hearse wheels. Still you bury them one by one quietly, respectfully, legally. Because you have to. Because once the law turns its eye toward you, really turns it, There is no trial. Just cost. Just shame. Just disappearance. You've seen the back rooms of the magistrate's hall. The holding cells. The brick pits for the condemned. You've buried some of them. With no names. With no prayers. Just a hole and a number on a stick. You try not to think about who dug those holes. Who might dig yours. Instead, you polish the brass on your door. You wear your gloves to the market. You speak only when spoken to. You smile just enough to look harmless, but not enough to look mad. You stay small. You stay quiet, because the law in this city is not a man in a wig. It is a breath behind your neck that never quite leaves. And if it catches you, you once set be buried with dignity. You once set be buried at all. So rest. Just for a moment. You stir still free. You stir still above the ground. You're still in the shop you built with your own hands. And for tonight at least, no one sits knocking. You don't go to church much anymore. Not because you don't believe. Belief is easy. The world is full of suffering. It has to be for something. But faith requires clean hands, open hearts, and the sense that someone's listening. Your hands are rarely clean, your heart rarely open, and if anyone's listening, they've been silent for years. Still, the bells ring every Sunday morning. They echo through the alleyways like polished gilt. You hear them while brushing the corpse of a seamstress who died with a needle still threaded through her blouse. She smells like rosewater and regret. The bells do not stop. You nod when clients ask for a cross above the coffin. You offer the prayers you've memorized from other people's grief. You say, "God rest his soul," with the same tone you use to discuss wood varnish. It sets, not that you stir mocking them. It's just, you've seen too much to believe in only one story. The priest visits sometimes, only when the family pays for a formal burial. He stands by the grave with white gloves and unread eyes, reciting verses while thinking of dinner. He rarely looks at the body. He rarely remembers the name. He blesses the box, not the soul. You watch. You say nothing. The churchyard is full of silence pretending to be salvation. But the people, the ones who walk past your shop with children in tow, they believe. They believe you carry curses in your pocket. They believe you speak to the dead. They believe your boots drag bad luck in with every step. You once found a small bundle tucked behind your door. String, feathers, a bone shard, and something that might have been a fingernail. You threw it in the fire. The flames hissed, but you didn't flinch. You've been called many things: death walker, corpse sleeper, shadow man. You have heard mothers whisper to children that if they misbehave, they shall be sent to the Undertaker who eats your dreams. You've had eggs thrown at your shutters. You have had salt poured across your doorstep. You sweep it away with the same broom you use for sawdust. Some nights you dream of a black-eyed man who knocks twice, then enters without waiting. He always sits in your chair. He never speaks. You wake up cold, sweating, mouth full of dust. You never tell anyone. Superstition clings tighter than theology. The local midwife believes in charms, wears a pouch of sage and nettles around her neck. Once she handed you a small stone carved with a symbol you didn't recognize. For protection, she said. You buried it with a child. The mother never noticed. A constable once accused you of necromancy, half joking, half not. You smiled. He didn't set. You don't keep crosses in your shop. Not anymore. They go missing, or return covered in wax, or fall without cause during storms. Instead, you light a single candle every night. Not for God, not for saints, just for quiet. A warm dot of defiance in a room full of cold boxes. There are rules, of course. Never stack two child coffins on top of each other. Never whistle near the embalming table. Never speak a body sip's name twice in the same hour. Old habits passed down from the man before you, the one who died with nails in his pocket and his eyes open. You closed them yourself, and whispered his name only once. You used to wear a charm under your shirt, a tiny pewter angel. It was a gift, long forgotten by the person who gave it. One day you dropped it into a grave during a particularly rainy funeral. You didn't retrieve it. You told yourself it belonged there more than it ever belonged on you. You wonder sometimes what happens next. After breath, after box, after bone, You've opened coffins that shouldn't have opened. You've seen expressions that didn't look like rest. You've buried people with their eyes wide, with clenched fists, with teeth bared against something no one could see. You've asked no questions. You've offered no answers. Because you know the truth. The soul doesn't leave in a rush of light. It lingers. It decays. It forgets. And whatever remains, if anything does, isn't waiting for bells or prayers. It's waiting for peace. You can give that. But you can give stillness. You can give quiet. You can close the eyes, fold the hands, make the last moment look like sleep. Even if it never truly was. You keep a journal, not of names, not of clients, just odd things. Cat howled during burial. Clock stopped at same time as breath. Child spoke after death, breathless. Just one word, thing. You don't just reread the pages. You just add to them. You don't know if it's faith. You don't first now it's madness. Maybe both. Maybe that's all belief is, a bruise where fear and hope keep colliding. But still, you stand by the graveside when the priest is late. Still, you cross yourself when a coffin creaks without cause. Still, you light the candle. Still, you whisper a name when no one else will. And maybe, just maybe, something listens. Or maybe it doesn't set. But either way, the dead are at peace. And that perhaps is enough. So blow out the candle. Breathe in the silence. Let the shadows curl at your feet. And rest. Until the next soul arrives. It sets not a feast. It sets barely a meal. Dinner is whatever remains. Of the day. Of your patience. Of the food you've managed not to forget or spoil. The fire has dwindled to a soft hiss behind its grate, casting long shadows that make the walls look farther away than they are. You sit on a stool with a wobble in one leg and a nail poking through the seat. It stabbed you once, but now you know where not to sit. You don't set a table. You don't light a second candle. You simply exist for a moment in the dimness, hands resting in your lap, head tilted slightly to listen, just to be sure no one is crying upstairs. No widow has returned for one last look. No boy has come to report another client has passed. Just stillness. And in that stillness you prepare the evening's offering to your own fragile body. Bread again, of course. The same stiff crust you broke your tooth on last week. You try soaking it in water, but it doesn't help much. You chew slowly, like your jaw has forgotten what it means to eat without effort. Your gums ache. The molar you lost has left a hole you can't stop touching with your tongue. A soft, sad crater in your mouth where something used to be strong. You slice a bit of onion, the last one. It's going soft in the middle, sprouting green tears that curl like question marks. You fry it with a knob of tallow scraped from the bottom of a tin. The scent is sharp, greasy, oddly comforting, like a memory of a better dinner you once saw someone else eat. You salt it with fingers that still smell faintly of formaldehyde. You found a potato, shriveled, half soft, sprouting. You carve the good parts and toss them into the pan. It hisses like a warning. You ignore it. No meat. You don't remember the last time you had meat that wasn't gray and ribboned with doubt. No cheese either. The last bit turned green and fuzzy a week ago. You watched it grow for 3 days before finally giving it to the rats. The onion paste stew, whatever it is, sizzles until it threatens to burn. You scoop it onto a plate that still bears a chip shaped like a crescent moon. You tried mending it with wax once. Didn't hold. You sit by the window, not for the view. There isn't one, just soot, lamplight, and the vague outline of someone else's grief. But you like knowing that someone, somewhere, might be eating better. It makes this easier to chew. You eat with a spoon that doesn't match anything else. You eat with one hand while the other strokes the frayed edge of your coat sleeve. You eat and stare into the empty air like it might say something back. It does instead. Sometimes you talk anyway. Better than last night. Could use some time. Maybe next week I boil the bread first. The fire pops in reply. You drink tea again. Reheated, stale, bitter, no milk, no sugar, just hot leaf water that steams up your glasses and reminds you that warmth still exists in this world, even if only for a few seconds. You once tried dining with someone. A cousin, long forgotten now. He came to visit once, after a death in the family. You shared bread in silence. He said he admired your calm. He never came back. You think he expected more? A table, a cloth, some candles, something holy. Instead, he got you. And this, and the smell of unfinished coffins. You rinse your plate with lukewarm water, wipe it with your sleeve, set it back in the cupboard beside a cracked cup and a bowl stained with time. The rats scratch behind the wall. You wrap the panel gently with your knuckles. It's a deal. They know the rules. They wait until you sleep. You tuck a piece of bread into a tin for the morning. You blow on your fingers and flex them as if food should fix the stiffness. It doesn't, but the gesture feels like care. Dinner is not joy. It is not comfort. It is a ritual of resistance, a declaration that you are still somehow worth feeding, even if no one else agrees. You stand. You stretch your back until it pops. You run water over your hands until the blood under your nails feels less visible. You hang your coat on the hook beside the ledger. You fold your napkin, which is just a square of black linen cut from the hem of a forgotten funeral dress. And you breathe. You are full but not satisfied, fed but not nourished. And you whisper to no one, as you do each night. That will do. And for tonight, it does. Sleep doesn't skim easily anymore. It's just not the nightmares that keep you from it. You're still used to those. It's just the quiet, that strange cotton-thick silence that wraps itself around the rafters, presses down on your chest and asks, "Are you still here?" You lie on your cot, arms crossed over your stomach, as if bracing for a blow that's never quite landed. The blanket is heavy with damp and dust. It smells like everything you've ever buried. The candle flickers low. You've learned not to watch it too closely. Last time, the flame curled into a shape that looked like a hand. You didn't sleep for 3 nights. You close your eyes, and you drift. The first dream is always bread. Fresh bread. Still warm, crust soft, the middle like clouds made of butter. You tear into it with clean hands. Clean, not just scrubbed, pink, perfect, innocent hands, the kind you haven't had since you were 12. In the dream you are not ashamed to eat. No rats, no damp corners, just you and a table and a silence that doesn't feel like guilt. Then the scene shifts. You stir flying. Not fast, not heroic, just floating, as if the air itself has grown tired of letting you fall. The city shrinks below. You see the rows of houses, the bent chimneys, the narrow alleys where whispers curl like smoke. You see coffins, so many coffins, stacked like firewood in a warehouse that does not exist. You do not land. You drift upward until the clouds swallow you. Then the fever begins. You stir sweating. You stir back in the shop. But something's wrong. The bodies have opened their eyes. Not all of them. Just enough. One stares at you like he knows your name. You never told him. One smiles, lips sewn together. One whispers from a mouth full of cotton. You forgot me. You try to speak, but your tongue is full of nails. You wake gasping. But only inside the dream. The dream shifts again. You stir a child now, kneeling in church. The floor is cold stone, the air thick with incense. You don't understand the sermon. You never did, but you remember the feel of your mother's hand on your shoulder. Warm, steady, real. You turn to look at her. She sits not there. Just an empty seat, and your name echoing from the rafters like a warning. You dream of water next. Always water. Dark, deep, still. You're in a boat, and there's a box beside you. You know what's in it, but you don't want to lift the lid. You do anyway. It sits you, but not how you look now. It's you as you used to be. Younger, cleaner, untouched. The eyes are open. You close the lid and push the box into the water. It doesn't sink. It floats, following you. You dream of fire, of ash on your skin, of mourners laughing, of being locked in your own coffin by accident or maybe on purpose, and hearing the shovel scrape above your head. You bang and bang, but no one hears. And still you sleep, because dreams don't fade ask permission. You dream of hands, not touching you, just reaching out of walls, out of windows, out of your ledger. The names you wrote rise like smoke and curl into words you don't remember writing. Sometimes the dreams are kind. Sometimes, you walk through a field, no coffins, no bodies, just grass and sky, and a breeze that smells like soap. Someone is there, faceless but familiar. They don't speak, they just sit with you, and for once you are not the only one who understands silence. You dream of snow, of finally being cold in a way that isn't set lonely, of sleeping under white instead of black, of no longer waking, of peace that feels like exhaling after years of holding breath. Sometimes, you dream of nothing, just black, not frightening, not endless, just absence, like a room where no one ever cried. You wake then, usually with the taste of dust in your mouth, usually to the sound of mice scratching in the walls, usually unsure if you ever truly slept. You sit up, you breathe, you check your hands, still stained, still cracked, still yours. You touch your chest, still beating, still here, still you, and you whisper as always, another night, another dream, another step closer. You rise, you dress, you light the fire, you sharpen the knife, and though the dreams still cling to you like wet linen, you do not stop. Because even the worst dreams are softer than the world outside, and because somewhere inside them, you still believe there is something waiting, something warm, something quiet, something that, just maybe, smells like bread. So rest again if you can. The dead will still be here when you wake. They always are. You already know too many ways to die. You catalog them by feel, not by name. The soft crack of a fall on cobblestones, the stink of infected gums, the quiet wheeze of lungs filling with wet. You've held cold hands that just hours earlier were trying to work a sewing needle. You've seen the shade that slips into a man's face the moment he realizes the fever isn't going away. You've buried the sudden, and you've buried the slow. Now you wonder, what will it be for you? Cholera, maybe. It's everywhere this year. You hear it in the coughing behind shutters, see it in the eyes of milkmaids, glazed with fever, trying to finish their rounds before collapsing. The water down the street has turned. Again, you boil yours, mostly, but sometimes when you're tired, you forget. Or maybe consumption, the polite word for lungs turning to mush. You've buried whole families with it, mother, father, daughter, 2 sons, one after another like dominoes collapsing in slow motion. The last one to go is always the one who looks the healthiest. It likes irony. You feel a rattle in your chest when you wake some mornings. You tell yourself it's the damp, the mold, the long nights bent over the workbench, but it lingers. You cough into a cloth when no one sets looking. You check the color. So far not red. You don't drink like others do. You've seen what gin does, not the numbing but the way it makes a man forget his footing near stairwells and gutter edges. You once embalmed a man whose face had split in 2 from a curbside fall. No one claimed him. You covered the wound with cloth and stitched a line where no one would look. Still, sometimes you wonder if poison might be kinder. Then there sips the accidents, the nails, the blades, the heavy lid that nearly crushed your foot last spring. You work with splinters and rust, rope and force. You've bled from a coffin hinge. You've breathed in dust that tasted like rot. One slip and you're part of your own inventory. You once cut yourself while trimming a dead man's beard. Just a nick, but he was a sailor, yellow-skinned and fever-warm even in death. You scrubbed until your knuckles cracked. You waited. You lived, but you watched your hands for weeks, like they might turn against you. You think too about fire. How quickly it would take the shop, the polish, the pine, the curtains, the papers, all so dry. You keep a bucket near the hearth, just in case. You check the lamp twice each night. Still, you dream of waking to the ceiling cracking open in flame, of running down the stairs too late, of coffins glowing like orange teeth in the dark. Then, of course, there steps them. The people, the ones who stare too long, the ones who think you know too much about death to be trusted. You've seen the look. In the constable's eyes when he asks too many questions. In the mourner's face when you say you've seen a child just like theirs before. In the boy who delivers coal and won't step inside the threshold. If someone were to kill you, it wouldn't be out of rage. It would be because they thought they were helping, releasing you, silencing something that made them uncomfortable just by existing. You know this. It's why you never raise your voice. Why you never refuse a late-night knock. Why you never lock the door when someone's crying. You've been spared by discretion, not decency. And yet, despite all that, the germs, the blades, the fire, the people, what you fear most is stillness. The day your heart simply stops. No warning, no sickness, just the body deciding it's done. You picture it sometimes. You slump at the workbench, the saw in your hand slipping to the floor. No one notices for hours, maybe days. The boy doesn't come, the widow forgets her appointment. You are discovered by the smell. A reversal. A mirror of your work. Someone else pulling the sheet over your face. And then the questions. Who will dress you? Will they clean your hands? Will they fold your coat properly? Will they forget the small button on the inside of your collar? You hope not. You have spent so much time giving others peace. It would be a shame to leave without any of your own. And yet, you don't dwell on it. You keep waking. You keep sharpening the blades. You keep scrubbing the stains from the floor. Not because you think you shall avoid death, but because you want to meet it on your own terms. Clean hands. Straight back. Coat brushed. One last task completed before the end. And maybe, just maybe, a name still written in your own handwriting before the ink runs dry. So tonight, when you feel the ache in your ribs, the throb in your temple, the burn in your lungs, you do not panic. You sit with it. You nod. You say, not yet. And for now, it listens. You try not to think about them. The things that passed you by, that chose another road, that lived in a light you were never invited into. You pretend not to notice them each time they drift past the shop window like ghosts of a life that wasn't meant for you. But at night, when the streets are quiet, and the last candle has turned into a pool of wax, they visit you, not as regrets. That would be too sharp, too clean. No, they come like shadows, familiar shapes you never got to hold. You shall never see the ocean. Not truly. You've read about it once, in a pamphlet left behind in a mourner's satchel, a vast, heaving sheet of blue, the way it breathes, the way it swallows. You tried to imagine the salt on your lips, the sting of spray in your eyes, but you only know water as something that sits in basins and soaks into the cuffs of your coat. You only know it as something that carries waste or washes blood from the table. There is no ocean here. Only puddles. And drains. You'll never see the inside of a theater, not as an audience member. You've passed one, once, on a job. Outside, men in fine coats, and women wrapped in furs gathered beneath golden lanterns. Their laughter sounded like wind chimes made of ivory. You wore your gloves. You stared too long. Someone asked you to move along. You did. You'll never see your name carved in stone above a headboard, polished and visited and remembered. You'll be buried with the others who didn't have the coin, a box in the pauper's field. No marker, no mourners. Maybe the boy will say something if he's still around by then. Maybe not. Maybe the rats will come first. You still never see a wedding dress up close. You've buried them, sure, wrapped around corpses that died too soon, too tragically, but never the way it's supposed to be. White, hopeful, alive. You wonder sometimes what it would feel like to be on the receiving end of a promise, to have someone say your name and mean it as something worth staying for. But there's no one here now. And there never really was. You'll never see the stars without soot in the way. Not the real stars. Not the ones you read about in the papers. Constellations that mean something. You see flickers sometimes through the grime, but they blink like they're scared to look down. You've never seen a mountain. You once saw a picture of one, tall and snowy, standing like a god against the sky. You wonder if the air up there smells like anything other than varnish and rats. You wonder if the silence is kinder. You'll never see the inside of a bookshop and be able to afford more than a paper scrap. You'll never see your name written in a story, not as hero, not as villain, not even as footnote. You'll never see someone choose you for anything other than necessity. You shall never see your own eyes unshadowed. You'll never see yourself laugh without flinching at the sound. You'll never see what you could have been if you'd been born on the other side of the alley, the one with clean water and bread that didn't have mold and a mother who wasn't always tired. You still never see justice. Not really. You've buried too many good men punished for being poor, too many kind women sentenced for survival, too many children with their fingers curled around nothing, as if still trying to hold on. You'll never see freedom, not the kind that comes without consequence. Yours was always survival, 1 inch at a time, 1 shilling, 1 nail, 1 stitched eye at a time. You'll never see forgiveness, not from the priest who avoids your glance, not from the mother who needed more than a box, not from the mirror that watches you undress with disappointment. You shall never see peace. Not while breathing. Maybe after. Maybe. But despite all of that, the ocean, the stars, the wedding, the story, you do see some things. You see the face of a man when he lays his daughter into a coffin, hands shaking as he tucks her hair behind her ear. You see the trembling lip of a boy trying to be brave beside his mother's grave. You see the silence in the chapel when a widow stands alone, head high, coat borrowed, eyes like rusted steel. You see the way people break, and you see the way they still dress the dead with love. And maybe that seps something. Maybe that seps enough. You fold your hands across your chest. You look at the ceiling, cracked and familiar. You breathe, and you think, there are things you still never see, but you have witnessed more than most ever do. And maybe, just maybe, that seps why you were never invited into the light. You had work to do here, where it seps dark, where it seps necessary, where someone had to stay behind and remember what the world prefers to forget. So close your eyes. Let the stars you'll never touch rest above your bones, and dream of oceans anyway. You've been wondering about it lately, more than you'd like to admit. Not because you expect a legacy, you've seen too many legacies rot from the inside out, too many names carved into headstones that no one visits, too many weeping widows who stop weeping by the next winter. You know how thin remembrance is, how quickly it fades, like breath on a coffin lid. Still, you wonder. What seps left when the body quiets? What remains after the last candle is snuffed? After the last casket has been lowered, after the shop shutters close one final time? Will anyone remember you? No, not really. There's no portrait, no heir, no book of letters tucked neatly into a trunk to be found by some curious grandchild. Just this place, this crooked little mortuary shop with its uneven stairs and wax-stained floors and tools too worn to sell and too meaningful to throw away. Maybe the boy will remember, if he sits still alive. If he hasn't wandered off to sweep for someone with cleaner boots and a steadier hand, he might say your name once, years from now at a pub when the conversation goes quiet. There was a man, he might say, who taught me how to lace a shroud, and someone will nod, and the moment will pass. You don't have a family. Not anymore. Your brother left for the colonies when the price of meat went up. Your mother died before you had enough money to buy her anything better than pine. Your father died screaming. You embalmed him yourself. You did it right. No one thanked you. You once did be buried next to anyone. There's no space for that. And you've seen what happens to people who ask too much from the ground. The rich get monuments. The poor get trenches. You know where you're going. Maybe someone will steal the nails from your coffin to sell for scrap. You wouldn't blame them. You've done the same. Maybe your body will be dressed by a stranger who forgets to tuck the corner of the cloth under your chin. Maybe you'll be stacked too high. Maybe no one will close your eyes. Maybe someone will. You have kept a ledger. Not the business one. That's for show. That's for taxes. The other one. The hidden one. The one filled with scribbled notes, not about death, but about the strange beauty of how people mourn. She kissed his fingers before the lid closed. He asked me to lie and say it was painless. They sang, off-key, loud, glorious. You don't know why you wrote them down. You just did. Maybe that seps what you leave behind. A record of kindness buried in soot. Not the big moments, the small ones. The handkerchief left behind on the chair. The girl who gave her last coin for a sprig of rosemary. The way no one ever touched the body and didn't tremble. You leave behind a scent. Of varnish, of dust, of sweat. It clings to the wood, the floorboards, the doorway, the sleeves of a coat still hanging near the door, stiff with time. Someone might walk in long after you're gone and say, It still smells like him in here. And that will be enough. You leave behind the coffins. Not the ones you sold, the ones you started and never finished. Half-built boxes stacked in the shed, warped from weather, waiting for someone who never came. You leave behind a chair with one leg shorter than the rest. A candle holder with wax melted into the shape of a flower. A spoon that never matched the rest. You leave behind silence. And maybe, someone will hear it. And pause. Just for a moment. And feel something they don't yet have a name for. And maybe that will be you. Still lingering. Still doing the job. Still watching from the corner, unseen. And maybe that sip's enough. You once asked a priest what comes after. He said, peace. You asked, for whom? He didn't answer. You didn't expect him to. So instead, you leave behind what you can. A stitched collar. A gentle silence. A drawer full of black ribbons. And a name scratched faintly into the underside of a workbench. Your name. Yours. Still there. Still waiting. Even when you are not. So sleep now. Let the night have you. Let the weight lift. Not because you're done, but because the world can carry itself for a little while. You have left enough. And enough for someone like you. Is everything. The fire has gone out. You didn't notice when. At some point between folding your coat and closing the ledger, the last flame gave up. The room is dim now. Not dark. Not yet. But the kind of dim that swallows corners and erases details. Like the world is beginning to forget itself. The air is still. Not heavy. Not cold. Just still. You sit in your chair, the one that rocks if you lean too far to the left. Your hands rest on your knees. Your spine curves forward without instruction. You are a question mark now. A soft bend in a sentence that no longer needs to be finished. Outside, someone coughs. A child. Maybe, or a drunk, or a ghost, it hardly matters. The sound fades. There are no more clients for today. No more coffins to build. No buttons to polish. No linen to trim. No candles to light. You did it all, or you didn't. Either way, the day ends the same. You close your eyes. And for once it feels like closing a door instead of a wound. You think of the girl who once brought you an apple. Small, bruised. She said nothing, just placed it on your doorstep and left. You bit into it and found it tasted like the color green. You think of the man who requested to be buried barefoot. Let the worms find me honest, he said. You think of the boy who tried to hold his mother's hand through the lid, and the woman who asked if she could lie down beside her husband one last time, and you said yes. You remember things that didn't matter when they happened, but somehow feel important now. The way the rain sounded on the roof that night. You almost didn't wake up. The way your name looked in someone else's handwriting. The way the silence changed when a body was finally gone. You think of no one in particular. And yet everyone. They pass through your mind like lanterns bobbing down a dark canal. No words. Just light. Just shape. Just the memory of something once held, then lost. Then held again. Briefly. Gently. The way you hold breath when watching someone sleep. No one knocks at the door. The rats are quiet. The wind forgets your name. Even the walls seem to exhale. You lean back in the chair and stare at the ceiling. The same cracked plank you've stared at every night since you were young enough to imagine a sky beyond it. Tonight, it doesn't look like a ceiling. It looks like a lid. And somehow that sip's fine. You are tired but not broken. Alone, but not lonely. Forgotten but not gone. And in the quiet you understand something. Not as a thought, but as a feeling, a truth too soft for words. You were never supposed to be remembered. You were supposed to remember. The names, the tears, the unfinished songs sung over open graves. The way the world ends quietly in someone's arms. That was the work. And you did it. Not perfectly, but faithfully. Like a lantern kept lit long after everyone else stopped looking for the path. You breathe in. You breathe out. You do not wait for sleep. You do not fear what comes next. There are no wolves at the door. No coughing in your chest. No debts on the counter. No one asking for one last look. Only this. A wooden floor. A dark sky. A final exhale. and a soft, unseen hand turning down the lamp. No one remembers your name, but that sep's okay. There are no wolves at the door, no cold in your bones. You've survived another day. Sleep now. Sleep. Now,